Welcome to the Conspiracy Atlas. In this episode, I will be discussing MK-Ultra, the CIA's mind control experiment. In the shadows of the Cold War, behind the white picket fences and the American dream, the United States government was conducting some of the most disturbing experiments in its history. Today, we uncover the truth about MK-Ultra, the top secret program of mind control, psychological torture, and illegal drug testing on unsuspecting citizens. The year was 1953. With the Cold War heating up, the CIA feared Soviet and Chinese experiments in brainwashing. In response, they launched Operation MK-Ultra, a clandestine mind control project spearheaded by chemist Sidney Gottlieb. The goal? To develop technique to control the mind, whether to break a prisoner during interrogation or build the ultimate Manchurian candidate. The Cold War wasn't just fought on battlefields, it was also waged in minds. In the early 1950s, America was gripped by paranoia. Reports from the Iron Curtain told of communist regimes using brainwashing to turn prisoners of war against their own countries. Could the Soviets manipulate the human mind? Could the Chinese erase memories, implant new beliefs? The CIA didn't want to find out the hard way. In response, CIA Director Allen Dulles authorized the formation of a secret program that would rival anything dreamed up by the Soviets, Project MK-Ultra. The project was officially launched in April of 1953. It would be overseen by a little-known CIA chemist, Sidney Gottlieb, a man who would become known as the CIA's poison-in-chief. But Gottlieb wasn't building bombs, he was engineering human behavior with drugs, hypnosis, and psychological trauma. MK-Ultra wasn't a single experiment, it was a sprawling network of over 150 sub-projects. Funded through front organizations disguised as legitimate research, these studies infiltrated universities, hospitals, prisons, and even mental institutions, all without the public knowing. Gottlieb's team believed the human mind could be broken down, deconstructed, and rebuilt from scratch. They weren't looking for truth serums, they were searching for total control. It was science fiction turned state policy, and for the next 2 decades, the CIA would test the boundaries of ethics, morality, and the human mind. The methods were nothing short of psychological torture. Test subjects were dosed with LSD, sometimes for days or even weeks on end. Others were subjugated to sensory deprivation, electroshock therapy, and forced hypnosis, all without their consent. One experiment kept the subject high on acid for 77 straight days. In another, agents observed men using prostitutes in brothels secretly dosed from behind one-way mirrors. They called it Operation Midnight Climax. The CIA's mission with MK-Ultra was deceptively simple: learn how to control the human mind. But their methods were anything but simple or ethical. Sidney Gottlieb and his team used every tool they could find, and many they invented themselves, to pry open the psyche. The crown jewel of their toolkit was LSD, a drug barely understood at the time and legal. To the CIA, LSD was a mind-bending miracle. They thought it might unlock truth, induce submission, even wipe a person's memory. But what they discovered was absolute chaos. Doses were often administered without consent, in prisons, in psychiatric hospitals, even in its own military. Some subjects were kept on acid for days, even months. In one case, a man was dosed continuously for 77 days. But MK-Ultra wasn't just confined to labs. In 1955, the CIA launched Operation Midnight Climax. They set up brothels in San Francisco and New York, staffed them with sex workers on the agent's payroll, and lured unsuspecting men inside. The men were drugged with LSD without their knowledge. On the other side of the glass, CIA agents watched and actually took notes. What was the goal? Well, it was to study how humans reacted under the influence in vulnerable, compromising situations. But the horror didn't stop at LSD. Subjects were bombarded with electroshock therapy, locked in sensory deprivation tanks, isolated for weeks. Some were put into drug-induced coma and played hypnotic suggestions on repeat, even 24 hours a day. They called it psychic driving. The idea was to erase the personality and replace it with a new one. The experiments caused lasting trauma, and many patients never recovered, or some didn't even survive. And the question must be asked, who were these victims? Who were the minds broken into, and in the name of science and even government secrecy? The victims came from all walks of life: military, veterans, prisoners, hospital patients, even children. Many never knew they were part of a government experiment. Some were left permanently damaged, others dead. Dr. Ewan Cameron, funded by MKUltra in Canada, subjected patients to what he called psychic driving, erasing their minds with drugs, sleep deprivation, and endless tape loops. The scale of MKUltra was a vast network. The techniques were brutal. But who are the people at the other end of the experiments? The answer is as chilling as it is tragic. Almost anyone could be a target. MKUltra didn't focus on elite spies or enemy targets or agents. Its victims were ordinary American citizens. Prison inmates, mental patients, drug addicts, soldiers, and like I stated, even children. In many cases, people were chosen precisely because they couldn't say no. They were seen as expendable, even disposable. One of the most famous figures in the MKUltra saga wasn't in the CIA at all, but a respected Canadian psychiatrist. Dr. Ewan Cameron, funded through CIA front organizations, was conducting his own experiments on patients in Montreal. Cameron pioneered a technique he called psychic driving. Patients were sedated with heavy tranquilizers. Some were kept in drug-induced sleep for up to 90 days, while audio loops played endlessly in their minds. Others were subjected to repeated electroshock therapy at 30 to 40 times the recommended voltage. In some cases, the experiments reached horrifying new lows. Children were given LSD, subject to isolation or hypnotically programmed. To this day, few of their identities are known, and fewer still have received justice. Many victims never knew what they had been gone through. They left hospitals and institutions with their lives shattered, misdiagnosed, misremembered, and marginalized. But perhaps the most famous casualty of MKUltra was one of its own, a government scientist named Frank Olson. What happened to Olson would spark decades of cover-ups, conspiracy, and a suspicion of murder. And one of the deepest, darkest chapters of the MKUltra experiment was the mysterious death of Frank Olson, a U.S. Army biochemist. Frank Olson was a U.S. Army biochemist. He was a family man, a patriot, and even an insider. He worked at Fort Detrick in Maryland, one of the government's most secretive biological warfare facilities. But in 1953, Olson began to have doubts about his work. He didn't know he was about to become MKUltra's most high-profile victim. In November of that year, Olson attended a retreat with CIA colleagues in Deep Creek Lake, Maryland. Without his knowledge, he was dosed with LSD. The man who helped develop chemical weapons was now a test subject himself. On November 28th, just 9 days after being dosed, Frank Olson checked into the Statler Hotel in Manhattan with CIA escort Robert Lashbrook. In the early morning hours, Olson allegedly jumped or was thrown from the window of room 1018A. The official story, evidently they say, was suicide. But even the police were suspicious. Olson had gone through the closed curtains and a shut window without disturbing the room's furniture. For decades, Olson's family believed he'd suffered a mental breakdown. But in 1975, the Church Committee exposed MKUltra to the public and the truth began to emerge. President Gerald Ford personally apologized. The government offered a $750,000 settlement. But Olson's son wasn't satisfied. He wanted answers. And in 1994, Eric Olson had his father's body exhumed. The autopsy revealed something chilling, a blow to the head sustained before the fall. The medical examiner concluded it was likely a homicide. Frank Olson's death raised more questions than it answered. By the time the public began speaking, the CIA already had destroyed the evidence. The cover-up was complete, or so they thought. MKUltra was exposed in 1975 during the Church Committee hearings. Investigations revealed just how far the CIA had gone. In response, President Gerald Ford issued an executive order banning medical experiments on humans without consent. But much of the documentation had already been destroyed by the CIA in 1973, leaving many questions unanswered. For 2 decades, MKUltra remained one of the CIA's most closely guarded government secrets, hidden behind fake fronts, destroyed documents, and even layers of bureaucracy. But in 1975, the program finally stepped into light and shocked the American nation. After the Nixon-Watergate scandal, Americans were hungry for the transparency. The U.S. Senate formed the Church Committee to investigate abuses of intelligence agencies, and what they uncovered was beyond any of your imagination. The hearings revealed that the CIA had conducted illegal experiments on unwitting American citizens, often with devastating psychological effects. President Ford issued an executive order banning drug experiments on humans without informed consent. CIA Director at the time, William Cobley, admitted the program had gone off the rails. But by then, much of the damage had been done, and much of the truth had already been destroyed. In 1973, just 2 years before the investigations began, Sidney Gold ordered all MKUltra files destroyed. But only a fraction and around 20,000 documents survived due to a clerical error and financial records building. Despite the revelations, no one was ever criminally charged for MKUltra. Sidney Gold quietly retired, and Frank Olson's family received a settlement, but never justice. And the victims of these experiments? Most were never identified, never acknowledged, or some never even believed that it happened. The files may be gone, the names may be lost, but the legacy of MKUltra lives on, in mistrust, conspiracy, and in the question no one can answer: how much are we still not being told by the government? MKUltra remains one of the most disturbing examples of unchecked government power to this day. Could similar experiments still be happening in secret? As long as governments have secrets, conspiracies will still thrive in the shadows. The legacy of MKUltra is written not just in government records, but in cultural paranoia. It lives in movies, novels, late-night radio, and even podcasts and online forums. In our fear of being watched, manipulated, or even controlled. Many of MKUltra's sub-projects remain a mystery, entire files destroyed, others still haven't been declassified to this day. And even though technology has advanced, so has the potential for psychological manipulation. Thousands of lives altered and or destroyed, and many for victims. There was never an apology, never compensation, and never closure to what actually happened. MKUltra wasn't just about mind control. It was about control, period, of the government over the American people, of truth, memory, even history itself. And the most terrifying question isn't what happened. It's what else are they hiding? So that's this week's episode of the Conspiracy Atlas, MKUltra, the CIA's mind control experiments. Thank you everyone for listening and tuning in. Be sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let your family and friends know about the Conspiracy Atlas, and let me know what you want me to cover next. Thank you everyone for listening, and this has been the Conspiracy Atlas.